Her husband goes, "You're nuts. There's no such thing." Until he saw one. I got started with my interest in Sasquatch when I was 10 years old, roughly 10. I saw the TV show In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. And at that time, they were showing the Patterson Gimlin film, first time I'd ever seen it. And I just was transfixed and instantly hooked because I just totally absorbed it and believed it right off the bat. I was just, oh my God, look at that's incredible. So that got me interested. And that interest, came and went as I was a kid, growing up, going to school, and all that kind of stuff. But I never lost interest. And as a child, I kind of already knew in my heart, deep down inside, that there was something else in the world that they just weren't telling us. I thought the world was a much bigger place than they were letting us on to. It was just a strange feeling, but I just always knew. And so I said, well, like the Bigfoot. I mean, where are they living? Where are they hiding? So it always stung with me. So I took a vacation with my wife to Washington State, and this would have been about 15 years ago. And we rented a cabin and we went hiking in the woods, hoping to maybe have an event. But what I found was when I went behind a tree to relieve myself, I found an ammo box strapped to a tree with a metal cable. So I'm going, okay, well, I must have found somebody's drug stash because at the time they had just legalized pot in Washington. So I thought, well, I found somebody's stash because they're rounding up all the illegal growers. Anyway, I finally decided, well, I might as well open this. I'm standing here. I opened it, and inside was a business card from a Sasquatch investigator from Washington State. And if you know, that ammo box was part of something called geocache. It's where you are given coordinates. It's a big game, and you're given geographical coordinates. That's all you get. And you have to go to these coordinates, find whatever it is that you're looking for, and it's usually a box. And inside the box are people will leave something and they'll take something, and you sign this little ledger, say, Mary Jo was here. It's called a geocache. It's a worldwide game. And so I was unaware of it at the time, but I found this card. I said, okay, I'm supposed to call this guy because that's the way I took it. I said, well, anything that'll point me in that direction. So I called the guy, and he was in Washington State. I said, I'm in Missouri, and I'm seriously interested in becoming a researcher, investigator. What do I got to do? So he gave me the name and number of the people organizing expeditions here in Missouri. And so you have to go on an expedition and be approved to become a researcher or investigator. So I went on several more expeditions, and I was made investigator. So I started doing reports for BFRO. And I've had 100 reports published to BFRO. That's a pretty good chunk. I've probably spoken over my life here about 450, 500 witnesses. But during my tenure with BFRO, as far as expeditions, I started leading expeditions. They got rid of the guy that was doing them, and I started doing them. And the very first one, we had a group that had gotten separated from our group. This is a night operation, pitch black, dark. And they were in a bad spot. We were in a bad spot. Radio connection was terrible. We were down in a holler. They were lost. They were lost in the woods somewhere. So I was scanning the woods looking for this group that had gotten separated from us. And I finally see this heat signature coming through the woods. And I was, oh, thank God they're here. Finally, okay, we can get going here. Well, it wasn't them. It was a Sasquatch. That heat signature I was seeing was a Sasquatch. So I watched it, and it came around the corner. And as soon as it broke into the open, it just vanished. It was like a light bulb, a flash bulb exploded in my eyes. And I went, what? What did I do? What? They can't do that. What the heck? And so the crowd I was with was pretty much an ape only crowd. And this suddenly took me in an entirely different direction because this creature just vanished. I'm not high. I'm not stoned. I'm not drunk. My equipment is working perfectly. I saw it. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not hallucinating in any way, shape, or form. I'm not, medically inclined with the paranoid schizophrenia or schizophrenia to see things. So I made up my mind right then. I said, I got to go to the other team because this isn't answering it for me. I saw something I couldn't explain. And that is the aha moment that got me to this point was, I believe they are flesh and blood, but they also have other skill sets. And that's where I'm at. And that's why I'll remain. And the material for my 3 books, and I'm about to write another one, I think, is all the people that have been ridiculed and made fun of and shamed because they saw a Sasquatch. Well, I want to be their voice. And, if they're going to get made fun of, they need to have somebody that can tell their story. And just together we decide what they saw. If we can't explain it away, then we got something, and it's amazing the number of people that are in the closet. I mean, they just can't talk to anybody because they get made fun of. And so that's kind of where I'm, how I arrived where you and I are talking right now. I have probably researched 200 for BFRO. I've had 100 reports published by them to the BFRO.net website. My own personal reports are at least 200 to 300 from people that are now contacting me directly instead of going to any kind of group, clearinghouse, because they have events that they get ridiculed for and laughed at for by many investigators, and BFRO is in that bunch. People just don't believe it. They just don't have an open mind. So those paranormal quantum physics supernatural type reports kind of get sent to the back of the line, and you just don't see them. And so that's why these people are not reaching out to me. So I say 450 to 500 is the total number of people and events I've investigated, and the number is continuing as we speak. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot that stand out, and some of them involve some very Star Trek spaced out bizarre things, but they're happening. These things are happening. So I've got several events that are just mind-boggling, and they're real. I've met a lot of these people. So you want me to run through a story or
Yeah,
two,
give
or
us give us some idea of some of the cases that you've worked on, and the details of some of that we can get a grasp of what you're dealing with.
sure. Uh, well, on the cover of the latest book, which I sent you, I've been to that property twice, and I'm not going to divulge the location or the state because none of that's important. It's just the event. Who it is and where it is means nothing. It's just the event. So the one on the cover of the book where the gentleman is walking through the clearing and he gets caught on his trail camera, then 4 seconds later, a Sasquatch appears in that same clearing on that same camera. 4 seconds. That creature, if you look carefully at the photo, that creature bumped the camera. So it sent it a little bit out of whack from his first picture. But the bottom line is, when he was out checking his cameras, and that's what they do about every 3 months, 2 months, he'll go. One of the guy in the picture is the town preacher. So, and he's good buddies with the landowner. So in trade for getting to hunt on the property, and they've become good friends. He helps him out checking the cameras. So they have about 32, 35 cameras in this area on the property. And every couple of months, he goes out and checks the batteries, checks the SD cards, maybe swap them out if they're full, and just make sure they're in working order and just moves on. So that's what he was doing on that day. And it's mind blowing when you look at that photo and realize He walked by, tripped that camera. 4 seconds later, same camera, same day, same place. A Sasquatch hand is in the photo 4 seconds after he walked by that camera. And obviously, it bumped the camera. He never saw it. He never heard it. He never sensed it. It was just crazy. And, I've been to the property twice. And so that photo got sent to a production company that wanted to do one of my other reports in another state. And those witnesses became rather difficult and demanding. They said, well, we want money, we want this and that. I'm just going, well, that's not how this works. So if y'all don't want to do it, then never mind. So we canceled that show. And I said, but I have another report just hit me a couple of days ago. It's a killer picture. I want you to check this photo out and you tell me if you think it's legit. And if it's legit, I can get us on the property and we'll go there. And I sent the picture before the day was over. The crew, the producer called me back and said, that's a good photo. There's no tampering. We're on our way. So that's where that photo came from, and we ended up taping a show that no longer didn't work out. It was a pilot for a show that just never took off. Excuse me. So, but that is an awesome, awesome photo in sequence, and many people look at that and go, that's the biggest bunch of hooey I've ever seen. Why would you post something like that? It's obviously fake. And then the other half is like, oh my God, that is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. So it's like it is in the Sasquatch world. You can't please everybody. You got the haters and the trolls and the ape only crowd and the ape and possibly paranormal supernatural quantum crowd. And so there's a divide there. So you're going to get that with anything you do, anything you post. But that was, and those guys are just salt of the earth. They're good, solid humans. They don't want anything. And the thing about all my witnesses is that there's no location, there's no names. All the geodata is removed from the photographs and any electronic means. I take all the geodata out, so you can't find out where it is by doing that. And so, because they want their privacy, they just want to have somebody to tell their story to and be left alone and share it with the world. Maybe somebody else has an event and calls in, calls me, calls somebody they trust and can tell their story. So that's one of my favorite stories because I've been to that place and they have other things going on there. They've had some other sightings and events, things you just can't explain. We set up a gifting area at that camera location. And 2 days, 3 days later, after I left, one of their cameras was ripped off a tree and destroyed. And when I say ripped, it was pulled off and the strap was broken. And it wasn't a bear, although there were some teeth marks on it. But they did get it open, but they totally destroyed the camera. And I don't think whoever it was, and I will say probably a Sasquatch, did not like the camera down there in the little gifting area that I had created. And so they were voicing their displeasure the only way they knew. Instead of getting their cell phone a camera, which the other one did, he just ripped it off the tree and tore it up. Snap the plastic. Those things are really hard. You can run over them with a car and you won't break them. So that just added fuel to the fire of what's going on out there. It's a validity to them. So that's one of my favorite stories. I mean, I've got several others, but that one sticks out, and that one happened 2021 January. In the new book, also is a story of there's a family. I'll preface this. My main arena of research now is habituation. Which means that there are Sasquatch living on people's properties. They are living there, not just visiting. They're living on the property, and these are all multi-acre. I'm talking, 25 to 250 acre properties, but they live on the property. They see them, hear them weekly, monthly, yearly. they know they're there, And so the one that I'm going to tell you about now, the original, I met this family about 15 years ago. He was one of my first reports, and he was a traveling preacher. And what he did was substitute for churches that didn't have a pastor. Say they left and they were just waiting to find a replacement. So he preferred to do that. So he would travel around and be a member of a lot of different congregations. So I met him. That's what he was doing. He was hunting, and he had a Sasquatch walk up behind him while he was in his blind, was sniffing the air, trying to figure out where he was. And he walked around to the front of the tree and they stared at each other for about 5 minutes. Totally bizarre. But that's how I met this gentleman. Well, he is one of 30 or 40 members of a large family. And so, and I've met 3 or 4 other members of the family before I met the one I'm about to tell you about. And I've gone hunting and fishing with them, and almost every time there's a Sasquatch event or 2 or 3. And I think it's because these people are good, salt of the earth. They're deeply religious, devout, good humans. They don't hunt wastefully. In other words, they don't just go kill a deer, cut off their head for the rack, and leave the rest. I mean, they hunt and take what they need. They respect the land, and that's what the Sasquatch do. And they bonded, I think, with this family. Whether you can wrap your head around that or not, ladies and gentlemen, that's what they do. So the family I'm about to tell you about, I met them a year ago, a little over a year ago, and they had an event, and I went down to check it out. Well, when I met this family, I met three separate families within the big family name. And when I met, there was 9 of them at the house that day, and they all were pulling out phones and iPads and showing me pictures and Sasquatch pictures and structures and all kinds of things. And they're experiencing them daily. I mean, they're on their property daily. They watch the Sasquatch watching them while they, farm and clean the property and cut firewood and till the crops and all that. So anyway, they make their main source of business is they work farmers markets. So the younger boy there, he's, say younger boy, he's 23 or 4. They have greenhouses that they build out of, that looks like Quonset huts. They're arched and they have a very heavy plastic, and they stretch the plastic over it, and they have their greenhouses. Well, something was getting, or somebody was getting into one of the greenhouses and eating the strawberries or stealing them and taking the tops, and they discovered it was eating the tops off of radishes, which is a real odd configuration, but that's, they're both in the same greenhouse, and so they were eating them off, and and they thought, well, maybe there's neighbors are stealing stuff or just pranking me. So anyway, he heard something one night, excuse me, and so he says, I'm going to catch them. They were really ticked off at the time, just because someone's interfering with their farming work, which is how they make their living, And so anyway, he heads out to the greenhouse. Is about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't remember what time it was exactly, but wee hours. And he hears immediately when he leaves the house a scream, a bloody, loud, howling scream coming out of the woods. And then as he gets closer, he hears another scream from another section of the woods on the other side of his property. Loud, blood-curdling howl, definitely a Sasquatch howl. Then as he gets to the greenhouse, he hears a howl and a scream from inside the greenhouse. So he's going, oh crap, what did I get myself into? But it's too late now, because he's more irritated that they're taking his food. So he opens the door. As he opens the door, a juvenile Sasquatch runs by him. It brushes up against him. Literally, they touch. He could have kissed him. It was that far from his face. They were squeezing through a door, and it was just a regular 32-inch door. So they've seen this juvenile before, And so it ran right by him and it brushed up against his chest. It was just, who has that happen to him? I mean, it was just bizarre and incredible. But they've caught this juvenile in the greenhouse 4 or 5 times. I have a photo that's in the book. I didn't send you, but I have a photo that is a Sasquatch face pressing its face against the inside of the greenhouse with all this condensation from the heaters when they're run during the winter to keep the temperatures up. So there's a lot of condensation. It is a beautiful replica of this Sasquatch juvenile's face. I have 5 or 6 other photos they've sent me of different sized Sasquatch faces, all pressed against the heavy plastic in the condensation. I mean, you can't, it is what it is. When you see this photo, it's like, oh my God, crazy. So I don't know if the other photos are the same ones and I'm just getting partial, but the faces, the heads are definitely some different sizes. So there could be a clan or a family coming in there and helping themselves to the vegetables. Now their favorite vegetable to eat is eggplant. Of course, Sasquatch love things they don't get in the woods. But so this is going on weekly, daily. They've seen the juvenile. He's very certain that the one that ran by him is the one that they've seen among others, just walking around the property at a safe distance, 25, 50 yards, peeking behind a tree and that kind of stuff. But they see this weekly, monthly, yearly. I mean, it's just an everyday thing for many of my habituation witnesses. And so, what do you do with that? And so I've met these people. They're all deeply religious. They're good, salt of the earth humans. They don't want anything. Again, they don't want their name in lights. They don't want any money. They don't want anything. They just want to be able to tell their story and share it. And so, again, this kind of stuff is just falling in my lap because these people get ridiculed and shamed and nobody will talk to them. If they do talk to them, they go, yeah, okay, buddy. You sure you weren't, a little stoned? Maybe you had a bad tuna sandwich. You were just seeing things. You got sick. I mean, I don't know. What's the other explanation here? Well, that's just insulting. When people go at you like that. It was just, and they're trying to have a little fun and create levity. But that's, these people take it very seriously. And it's an honor and a privilege, honestly, for me to get this kind of material. And it's an honor for them to be chosen really by the Sasquatch because they feel comfortable enough uh, to have a back and forth, although at a distance, relationship, except when the one ran by him, it brushed right up against him. I've got another Sasquatch family that was shown a newborn baby. I mean, so what do you do with that? Yeah, these people have become friends. I've been with them for 7 or 8 years, and I get invited to most of these people's property every year. You want to come out, just let us know. And invariably, I'm going to experience something. It's just crazy. I mean, the list goes on. Yeah. I heard a couple of yells. So the night I went out to this property, I decided to sleep in my car because I didn't want to put up a tent and draw attention to myself. Although I guarantee you, Sasquatch, the Sasquatch investigator, when you pull in the driveway, they go, "Oh, there's another one." He's probably got cameras and voice recorders, and he's going to be wearing camo and all this other junk. I heard the knocks and the calls. Now, here's something that happened. I woke up the next morning and the kid was out earlier than normal. One of his cats, the mother cat of all these kittens that were there, died overnight. And so it was very sad. So, and they buried him. And I said, well, a suggestion, don't mark the grave. Don't put any flowers because I had another family that had a pet die and they buried it and they put the flowers in the ground. The Sasquatch pulled all the flowers up, laid all the flowers right next neatly to the hole. They didn't kill the flowers because they don't mark their graves and they don't want you marking your graves either because someone will dig it up. That's a mindset. I mean, so that's what happened. So we went over there. He ended up burying the cat. He just piled rocks on top of it. I hear from them about 2 months later, and they had somebody, Sasquatch, had taken the tops of mustard and turnip greens, pulled them off the plants, and as they left the greenhouse, they laid them on the grave of the cat. So there you have some humanity from a Sasquatch. They're sentient, sapient beings. They reason, they think, they're self aware, and they know that that cat was a family pet that gave birth to all the little kittens that were running around. And it laid stolen tops off the turnip mustard greens on the grave. They had a cross, they had a cross as a headstone, but that was it. And so, and they sent me the pictures. It's like very moving. And who does that? And no, these people aren't faking this, but this is the kind of relationships that people are having with a dumb ape. They're not dumb apes. They're far from it. They're as intelligent, or probably vastly more intelligent than we are in a lot of different ways. They have skill sets that we just can't comprehend, but they do have them. Quantum, cloaking, vibrational frequency change, just flat out disappearing, mind speak, uh, all kinds of things. A language, which I don't even consider to be quantum or paranormal. The knowledge that they've got a language. From Ron Warhead, and Ron did a commentary on my first book, and so it's common belief and knowledge, if you have an open mind, that they do have a language. You know, and so that is the thing that happened to me. That it didn't happen to me, but it happened while I was there. And then a few days later, they get, a marking on the grave. They get a gift of vegetation. We're feeling your pain. That's just incredible stuff, and it's really happening. The other story that relates to this one is I have a family that I've been, like I said, I've been friends with them for about 10, 12 years, somewhere in there. And I've been out to their property multiple times. And the owner, his routine every morning was to get up, and they have a huge acreage. It's over 200 acres, all fenced. Every inch of it is fenced. So every morning he has to get up and walk a quarter mile to his mailbox. Got a long road. So he takes the dog, who's now passed, but they took the dog and he walks him up. That's his exercise for the day, because he stays in a pen. He was a big bad dog. And so they walk to the front of the property, get the mail, and they have seen Sasquatch watching them as they go up and down the driveway, because it's a routine. It's something he does every day, or the wife might, but every day that was his routine, to take the dog and walk it. So on occasion, he would see Sasquatch peeking behind a tree, seeing what you're doing, and walk back, and it was just another day in the life. Well, one day he's walking up there, and there's two. Obviously, I will say obviously, but I propose it was a alpha male and the mother. They stepped from behind a tree, and she was holding a newborn Sasquatch. I mean, it was a baby. And I really don't remember the conversation right now exactly. I don't know if remember if it had hair, if it was virtually naked like we come out. But it was a baby. He said it was just a little ball, but I could see the head, and it was moving, and it was a baby. This week, maybe 10 days ago, a week ago, they get a picture on a trail cam, and this happened about 2.5 years ago. That event, and so they have trail cameras all over their property as well. And so they sent me a photo of what looks like a juvenile, about 4 foot tall, and massive parent standing behind them. They're not really clear because it's a sunrise photo. It's a little dark and the sun is coming into the camera, but that you can see definitely a fur covered something standing about 4 foot tall, and then this massive alpha male standing behind it. And I proposed the possibility that this was maybe the baby you saw and it's grown up and they were posing for the camera. I mean, and it could be. I mean, it could not be as well, but it's just, I don't know. We don't know what the growth rate is of these beings, but it is such a perfect opportunity in the time frame, 2.5 years, to get to the height of 3 or 4 feet might be a possibility. But whatever it was, this happens to them all the time. Another story, which ties into the last one, was when his wife, her mother, got to be infirm and could no longer really take care of herself like she used to. They moved her trailer home onto their property and they put her across the road and down just a little bit. You could see it from their front porch. So she would have her autonomy. And so she could also, if she needed help, she was there. So on this one, uh, probably 3 or 4 years after she moved there, she had an old dog. It wasn't the same dog that the husband was walking. It was their dog. She had an old dog. It was big, fat, overweight, blind in one eye. And it was just, but it was a cute, big old teddy bear, it was a big mutt. And so it would just kind of wander around the property, kind of stay close to the mobile home. But one night she was out letting the dog do its business. And there's a pack of wild dogs. If you live in rural areas, you're familiar with this. There's a pack of dogs that will kind of run around, raid garbage cans and stuff, just be a general nuisance. And people really don't like them. And sometimes they get shot or just run off. Well, this pack of dogs hopped the fence, several of them, and were surrounding her dog. And they were about to tear it apart. I mean, they were just growling and yelling, and she was calling on her cell phone. The kids weren't answering because they weren't there. And so she didn't know what to do. And she was, oh my God, oh my God. And so all of a sudden, the most ungodly, chest thumping scream yell came out of the woods. And that pack of dogs tore out and were never seen again. Sasquatch was protecting grandma's puppy, even though they generally don't like dogs. But that kind of dog they're not afraid of, because that's not the kind of dog that runs chasing after them, that runs away from them. So anyway, fast forward a year or so later, the dog died. And so they went outside and they buried the dog, and they bought 18 carnations, nice little potted carnations that you can buy, anywhere. And they put them all around the grave, evenly spaced, real nice and neat. And they had a little service and said goodbye, puppy. And that was it. The next morning, all the flowers were pulled out neatly. They're not torn out or ripped, eaten, chewed on, none of that. They were pulled out of the holes and laid next to each hole nicely and neatly and very uniformly. And I told her, I said, they're protecting your dog. They don't want somebody to dig up their grave like humans are trying to find Sasquatch bodies or other predators or carrion killers that will look for a grave and dig it up because they can get to the meat. So, and I said, just don't put any flowers. Just put a nice little stone or something on there as a headstone and leave it. And that was it. But who does that? I mean, just, to pull the flowers out and just put them there. And I told him the stories about, people, they don't mark their graves, whether they go to another dimension to pass away, whether they go like if the elephants or bear, you don't find those carcasses either. The carrion, the scavengers, a body will disappear in a week to 10 days, totally, especially in the wild. So, and they've done studies where there's something called the body yard, the bone yard. They did a special on it. It's a thing in Tennessee. It's a experiment that's done by one of the colleges there, where they put cadavers. They get cadavers donated, dogs, cats, humans, whatever. And they put them outside and see how long it takes them to totally be dissipated. A week to 10 days, and they're gone. So you're never going to find a bone, a bones or bodies unless you're just incredibly lucky. And some Sasquatch was incredibly careless with the way it disposed of the remains of a dead one. So, excuse me. But so that's just another sign of emotion and feelings and being aware of the humans, and they're showing compassion, which is one of the lessons I believe they're trying to teach us, is to be more compassionate, more respectful of the earth, more respectful of each other, stop all this, turmoil and horrible things that are going on in the world. Is, I don't even need to list that. So, but that's just an incredible event. There's nobody out there. There's nobody. And who would come on in rural America? You don't walk onto somebody's property and try to go play a prank. That's how you end up shot. So there's none of that going on. There's no pranking. That's all the people around there are aware that there are Sasquatch in the area, and they just let them be. But this family has them visiting their property routinely. Just this in the last 60 days, I've got 3 brand new families that have them living on their property, or they're quite certain they just discovered. But 2 of the 3 heard conversations. They heard the samurai chatter. And before they could even try to describe it, I said, let me tell you what you heard. And I did my very best samurai chatter. At least I think so, but anyway, and they were like, oh my God, that's it. That's what we heard. And then I sent them to Ron Moorhead's website, the Sierra Sounds, and, but uh, uh, these 3 have just discovered them living on the property. Now you see a little subtle hint here and there, and then all of a sudden you start seeing them, or seeing more and more signs. And suddenly it's like, I can go out there once a week and there's footprints, there's a tree structure, there's a twist off 10 feet up in the air on a tree. So, I mean, but 4 of mine have ongoing relationships, gifting, uh, going on. The family I just told you about, uh, what they do for entertainment when TV sucks, and it usually does, they go sit on their front porch. And I've done this with them one night, and they just do whoops and howls, and they whoop and howl back. And my voice was mimicked exactly like my voice. Their voices were mimicked back to them exactly, male, female voices. I mean, it was a clone. It was, and so I've sat on the porch and done that. It's just so cool. You try it, Carter. Well, okay. You're flabbergasted that it's that easy. But if there's a relationship and they know there's no harm, there's no ill intent intended, things go about like that. It's just it's a fascinating, and it's going on all over America right this minute. Somebody listening to this is going to say, that's happening to us. Or Uncle Bobby, remember he told us that story 10 years ago, and we all laughed at him. And somebody is either having that experience or know somebody who is. You may not even know one of your friends has had an experience because they won't talk about it because of fear of ridicule. So, but this kind of stuff goes on and on. It's just an example of how the relationships are. It's just, some are a little bit more hands-on, some of them are a little bit more standoffish, but they routinely see them. I'll give it at least every 3 to 4 weeks. They'll see them or see a sign or hear something, so they know they're there. They're not just passing through. I'm getting people now. I mean, the people that just call me are all from out of state, actually, Alabama, uh, Arkansas, and Mississippi, and I got them within, like I say, 60-day period. I was just blown away, and I was going, okay, somebody's pranking me, because we're hearing voices, we're hearing conversations, and I did a 2-hour Zoom with the one family, with the mother, the father, the teenage daughter and the teenage son who couldn't be there. He was going to be there, but the daughter and the son have heard two Sasquatch and three Sasquatch speaking. They could tell by the different tonality, the pitches of the voice. And this is something I tell everybody. It's fairly well documented that you really need to be careful. The only thing that you really need to be careful with if you get into a relationship type of thing and you're gifting one another, be very careful about food. They love human food. Any food that you can get that they can't get in the wild, they're all over it, with a few exceptions. They don't like turnip greens. They don't like crawfish. My people in Alabama were trying to gift them with that, and they took everything else but left that behind. And they don't like potatoes either. But that's something you can, get in the wild. But anyway, I tell them be very careful about gifting food because that good old human food, jar of peanut butter, a candy bar, leftover chicken carcass that's all cooked and got spices and stuff all over it, they love that stuff. And if you give it to them, a lot of people started out giving table scraps every night or every other night. When it was too much for the dogs, they just threw it out in the yard and they knew the Sasquatch going to eat it. And sure enough, they were eating it. They could see the footprints and stuff. So, but when they quit doing it, Sasquatch got a little testy, come up and start banging on the house, throwing rocks and branches at the house, growling and howling, pretty much saying, "Hey, human, where's our food? I like that barbecue." I mean, they're not saying that, but they're upset because the regularity, of the food offered. Hot dogs is another thing they just love, hot dogs. Now they'll steal your food off your trees if you're growing apples, apricots, all the things grow here, black cherries, stuff like that. They take your food and they usually will strip a tree about half and leave you half. But the thing I just caution them with is don't get into a habit of gifting them food every time you gift. Do it once every couple of weeks, once a month, because they get testy. I have a very successful gifting thing going with a lady out west, uh, upper, what is some of the upper states out there? Trinkets, mirrors. You go to Dollar Tree and you can, for $20, you can get a whole bunch of stuff and outfit yourself to death. But the little cheap girls' necklaces or the beads, the Mardi Gras beads, that kind of stuff, little toy dolls, little figurines, little cars, mirrors, and the one the mirrors are either a big hit or they're not a big hit. The lady out in this other state, Western state, took my advice and was putting mirrors up. She hung up 3 mirrors. Well, they tore them all down. And so she put them back up and they took them all down. And when they took them down, they put them face down on the ground. So she put them back up. Well, they left up 2 and one went on the ground and it got broken. And so she replaced it. And the other 2 that were not replaced, they were torn down and they got broken, the glass. And so she's put them back up and they're there now, but they don't like to see their face. And I thought they would, because the family I was telling you about with the dog that got buried and all that stuff, they've put up mirrors. I put them up across the road. I put up 5 mirrors. 4 are still there. 1 has disappeared. I put them up with a picture hanging wire, so you couldn't just pop. You had to pop it off. So the wire was on the ground and the mirror was gone. So and I thought they would always like to see the reflection. That's just me putting a human, opinion on a mythical creature that doesn't exist. But I thought they would like to see their reflection when it wasn't in a pond or a puddle of water. You could see yourself like, oh, that's me, But apparently this group of Sasquatch don't like it, and the fear of mirrors. And this is just my supposition, but if you go back a couple of hundred years, the Sasquatch and the Native Americans had a symbiotic relationship. They traded food and other items, and when the white man did all the disservice to the Native American tribes and were packing them off and making them do the Trail of Tears, and they were taking all their photos. The Native Americans thought, if you take my photo, you're going to steal my soul. I don't want you to take my photo. They hated it. And so I think they may have passed on that belief system as they dealt with the Sasquatch. That I think, that Gamma is evil. It steals your soul. The medicine men have never seen one. And you hold an object up and suddenly your face is on a daguerreotype, a big one of those big square negatives. And you go, oh my God, they've never seen that. So they're going to go to the most symbolic thing. Well, you stole my soul. That's me, but I'm here. So you must have stolen my soul. So whether that has any bearing on the mirrors being broken out there, they could just not like the mirrors. But that's a theory I put forth, uh, because it's possible that they translated that information to one another. And so as some Sasquatch like them, some don't. The others that have not tried mirrors yet, they're doing other things, putting up little wind chimes, little cheap wind chimes and stuff. You can make them and stuff. Some of the stuff's taken, some's not. Some of it's moved around, some's not. I mean, they move things. They'll take a bag of apples and they'll leave a dead rabbit that's been gutted. The head's been popped off. That happened to the people out west. Uh, they It wasn't because of gifting. I was telling you about they have an apple tree and a pear tree. The Sasquatch took all the fruit from the middle of the tree up. They left the low hanging fruit for my people. Well, she got ticked off. She was yelling at him, giving him what for. I said, "What? You don't steal our food. I'll give you some, but just don't be stealing our food." And so the next morning, after they got their butts ripped, there's a headless, gutted, freshly killed rabbit with its head pulled off. It's placed in this little bitty gurgling pond you can buy at like Home Depot, those little three-sided things you bury in the ground. You can have a koi pond or whatever. So that rabbit was left as an apology. I'm sorry, we took your food. And it hadn't happened again yet. Crazy. I mean, but they have a relationship. They deal with each other. Some of them don't need my advice. I mean, I'm there if they need me, but they got a handle on it. This has been going on before they ever got a hold of me. So I don't need to tell them anything. They're telling me stuff, because this is what really works. This is what works with this family. And but that is just like that bouquet of mustard and turnip green tops left on the grave of that cat. They left a rabbit at another property, an entirely different situation, as an apology for getting yelled at and stealing all their apples. Isn't that bizarre? And they got a fish. About 3-4 days later, there was the fish in that pond. Well, they're out in the middle of nowhere. It was like a little perch, like 3 or 4 inch perch. That could not have gotten there any other way but to have been placed. Her husband, who's a non-believer, up to that point was a non-believer. He is now a believer. He said, well, probably one of the herons flying over, or a hawk or something, had dropped its fish it caught out of a creek and it fell in the pond. Okay, so a hawk flying 100 feet up above happens to have dropped a fish that it just caught right in our little pond that's about 3 feet by 3 feet. Okay, I'm going to go with my theory that it was another gift. Because that theory doesn't hold water, no pun intended. So but my whole thing is, this is a sample of the relationships that are going on with families and people all over America, and most of them aren't going to say a thing to anybody because they don't want to get made fun of and ridiculed, but they would love to tell somebody who would listen to it. And that's where I'm starting to get all these calls and emails from people who have no one to talk to. And again, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying I'm available and I'm not going to laugh at you. We're going to figure out what you have going on. And if we can't come to another, well, maybe it was a bear. I don't go to any of those places because these are sane, rational people. They know what they saw. And so to even start going there, but if they say, well, I'm not sure. If they're not sure, I'll say, well, I'll throw up some examples. But as a rule, they know what they saw. They just have no one to talk to. Yeah, one family, and they were in my second book. They were in Tennessee, and they had two house. They saw fingerprints and handprints on the husband's truck, and they were walking on the porch, walking around the porch at night, And she watched one of them had to duck its head to not bang its head on the eave. She was watching it walk from the front door down past the living room and around the corner. So, but they would come to the kids' bedroom at night, and they slept together in a bedroom, a shared bedroom, and a bunk beds, and they called them the fuzzy bears. And so when I was interviewing them about all the things they had going on, they started talking about the kids, and the kids were seeing these creatures for about a year or two before they even said anything. And the only reason the kids even said anything was because the parents finally told them, we're speaking about the Sasquatch with the wife's sister, who also has them on their property. And the kids heard it. Oh, you mean the fuzzy bears? And that's the first they'd ever heard of it. And for 2 or 3, 4 years, these creatures have been coming to their window at night and like watching them sleep, watch them watch TV, and just walk off. And they called them the fuzzy bears. Well, the older son, as he got older, it was disturbing to him. The younger kid was like all over it and all excited, and he was all wonderful about it. And as the other one got older, and he went to college and everything, he said, I don't know if I want to come back to the house. I just can't, because it just for some reason it's just bothering me. I can't tell you why. It's really affected me. I don't like it, and I really don't know, but I don't know if I want to come back and visit. And so he ended up going to joining the military out in Florida, and they sold the house and moved rather than not have a family member come home and visit when he should or wanted to. And so they've moved to a residential area that has no Sasquatch. It's just a regular subdivision like many people live in. And so they've got out of the Sasquatch interaction thing. They just, they were fascinated by it, but if it affected one of their kids adversely, which I think there was a really remarkable thing you did, is to take your children's feelings and emotions into account. And I said, well, that's fine. Look, honey, nothing's happened so far. You just picked up and moved because they want their family together and they want them to be affected by it. So that's one family that's bailed out of the thing. And they're very thankful for, it's a chapter called Earl and Darlene. It's in my second book. Not their real names. They pick the name. I'll let you pick your name. So Earl and Darlene living in the in the boonies in Georgia and Tennessee. It's a pretty good name. They're Earl and Darlene out there. That's just kind of funny. They pick those names, but that's one family that's gotten out of it, and everybody else is just asking and saying, "Well, this happened today. This happened yesterday. This happened a week ago." One of the other couples that called me, the husband is a non-believer, devout non-believer. All those non-believers will eventually have an event. It just happens. The woman I was talking about out west with the broken mirrors, her husband goes, "You're nuts. There's no such thing," until he saw one. And that's how it happens with everybody that says, well, they don't exist. They're just making fun. I've been hunting these woods 30 years. If there was something out here like that, I'd know it and I'd see it. And there ain't nothing here, so they don't exist. It's just a bunch of baloney. All of a sudden get a phone call from them. Well, can we chat? So they got baptized, as I call it. When you're adamant that there's nothing like that could possibly exist, and then you see one, you go, oh, well, okay, you got baptized. So, and that's common because we're taught. This is the one thing I would tell everybody. We are taught from the day you exit the birth canal, we are taught how to think and see and experience the world. There's no Sasquatch, there's no UFOs, there's no ghosts, there's no Mothman, there's no life on other planets. There's this, we're taught how to view the world for the first 20 years of your life, 18 to 20 years. If you finish high school and go on to college, 20 to 22 years. Your methodology of figuring things out in the world is taught to you. So you have in your head, you're already in denial and you don't even know it. Unless you happen to have an open mind and go, I know what I saw, and that I'm not seeing things that's real. But you're so we dismiss things like that and try to find other solutions. And if we can't, we just blow it off and go about it was a one-off thing and it never happens again. And so, but that's part of the reason that we think the way we do. That people go, well, that can't be. It's got to be a guy. It's got to be a guy in a ghillie suit, or it's got to be a deer standing up on his hind legs eating fruit, or it's a Sasquatch, or it's a bear on his hind legs. Anything other than what it really is. So we're already filling in the blanks with incorrect answers the minute we have an event. It's just it's sad, but that that's the school system, that's science, that's the government, that's social media. We're bombarded with this can't be, this can't be, this can't be. There's no UFOs. Oh wait, the government was lying. There is UFOs. So and it's going to be the same with Sasquatch. That they'll finally admit why they haven't said anything. It'll be some kind of baloney, just like the Tic Tac videos. Well, we'll get back to you. We didn't build these. We don't know who did, but we didn't build them. We don't know who did, and they're doing things we can't do. So we'll get back, and so we'll get something a little lip service from the government and the science and all that at some point when it gets to be so much that they just can't. They got to say something. Technology for one, because more and more people have state-of-the-art cameras and equipment. I'm fully equipped with FLIR. I carry a DNA. I carry a crime scene kit, which has a DNA kit. I can gather DNA, fingerprints. So I have more equipment at my disposal, as does everybody else. And then the people that are in the woods, everyone's got a camera and a camera phone, so they can get up and take that blurry picture that everybody is so famous for. And why they blurry? Well, you're seeing something that doesn't exist, and your hands are shaking, and you're trying to get a photo, and you're getting it out, and you're shaking. And if that being can change its vibrational frequency just a hair, so it appears out of focus, boom. So we have the technology, we're just not prepared to use it, or we are prepared to use it, and they're countering us. But that's why there's more people are out experiencing these things. So there's a lot of reportings of sightings. 50% of all sightings are road crossings. Driving down the woods, driving through the Mark Twain National Forest, and something ran across 64 highway as a Sasquatch, and that's the report. But the other 50% are the remarkable ones where they're showing skills that are off the charts. Cloaking, disappearing, mind speak, mental images implanted in your head. I've had that happen to me before, and my wife was a witness to it. It was hilarious. But so that's why we're seeing more reports, is because there's more people, and the stigma is slowly lifting about just putting out a report, as long as you don't get too quantum sci-fi with it. So seeing something that does not exhibit any intelligence is okay, but the reporting agencies, the big ones, they obfuscate anything that shows intelligence and thinking and reasoning. And it's not fair. It's not a good thing. But and we ridicule that when we do see it. So that's my take on the situation, and I guarantee it's more accurate than others might say or believe. Oh, it's a good one. It's so funny. My wife and I share the same office here. So her desk is over here. And so, I've been doing this for a while, but it really got knee deep when I started the books, when COVID hit. I started working on my books and had all my materials out. I've got some photos and things, really state of the art stuff. I mean, it's some good stuff I can't share with anybody, but it's like, if you want to see the real Sasquatch, look at this. And I've got some video that'll blow you away, but I can't show it. Anyway, so I've got this stuff all over my desk, And she'd go, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad you have a hubby. I'm glad you got, I said, wait, don't patronize me. What the heck? It's not a hobby. It's a real thing." And so she was kind of giving me grief because she is a sensitive. So she is, she's had some ghost encounters, and she's been uh, on several, very incredible outings. So she's a sensitive. She was just kind of giving me a hard time. I said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to take you to one of my areas." And she's an old Nebraska farm girl. So I said, "I'm going to take you, and maybe something will happen. Maybe I can change your mind, because this is a real thing." And so I took her to Ellington, Missouri. You're probably familiar with that. And uh, it's one of my research areas. That is the area where I led my first expedition, and I saw that Sasquatch vanish. So I go to this certain area because I know this is where they live. They live here, and it's a long crevice to get down to that place in the bend where I saw that one disappear. It's about 100 yards. So you have to park your car up at the top. You cannot drive any kind of vehicle down there. They have a big iron gate across there to stop people from trying to drive down there. And I talked to the conservation guy. I said, we were rescuing too many people on four wheelers that got stuck on these jagged rocks and stuff. We had to haul them out of here, and we just can't do that. So that's why the gate's there. So I take her there. We camp at another area just around the corner, and we go out about 10 o'clock, 10:30, and we park. I back my SUV up to the gate. It's padlocked, can't get anywhere. And we start walking down, and immediately she's getting the heebie-jeebies, the creep factor. There's something's watching me, something's here. And I said, "You're right. We're in their living room. They live here, and I'm feeling the same thing. But I'm just aware that they are here. I know they're there, and that tells me they're there. I'm not spooked by it, because I'm used to it." But she's like, "This is creepy. Let's go." I said, "No, no, no, no. We're just going to walk down to the bottom. We're just going to walk down to the bottom, and that's the curve where I saw that one disappear. We'll walk down there, we'll walk back, and we're done." So we kept walking, and she got more creeped out and creeped out and creeped out. She says, "I'm going back to the car." I said, "Well, no, you're not, because I got the key in my pocket." She says, "You're not going to walk back up there." And I shined my light where the car was, and it wasn't there. It was gone. I go, where's my car? What do you mean, where's your car? It's right there. You're shining your light on it. I said, I'm looking. I said, "It's not there." And she's going, "It is there. You're shining your light on it." I'm looking. I said, "No, it's not there." And I thought, wait, I got turned around. So I turned my flashlight and shined it down to where we were going. There's my car parked at the bottom of this ravine, at the end of the ravine, end of the trail. I'm going, "How'd that car get there? How did it get? We didn't go. What?" And she's going, "What do you mean? Your car's not there." I was shining the light, and I shine it back up, and it's not there. It's gone. And she's freaking out more and more because I'm freaking out. I'm going, "How did my car get there?" Then I went, "Oh, you." It's not what I said, but I'll just leave it. "You guys are messing with me." They were. I was going to go show her, and they ended up showing me. They were making me see my car, which I had parked up there. I was seeing it down at the other end of the ravine, which is absolutely physically impossible. And yet there it was. And she's watching me freak out, this grizzled researcher, veteran researcher guy. But I went, "You blankety blanks, I know what you're doing. You're messing with me. God dang it. That's freaking awesome. But God dang you." So I was irritated, but I was just like, I was giddy because, oh my God, they made me see something that was not in the place I left it. They put it somewhere else. And so about the third or fourth time I shined my light back up, and there was my car. She goes, "We're getting out of here." I said, "Okay, well, now you have an example." Example of the kind of stuff I go through sometimes when you have thoughts or visions put in your head, or you think you see a Sasquatch walk into a tree and it disappears and doesn't come out the other side, or things of that nature. So it was an awesome example. I would say it was either infrasound or telepathy. I'm going with mental telepathy because they were showing me an image. Usually with infrasound, you're getting disoriented or dizzy or sick to your stomach, and you got to sit down. It's more of a confusing type thing, which I think they use on deer and other animals. To confuse them makes it easier to hunt. But anyway, that was a prime example, and that happened, 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember, but it was just a classic. It's been a prime example of them being able to distort your reality, however they do it. It's just it was crazy, but uh, they made a believer out of her, and just cemented that I'm on the right track for me. Okay. Well, there's three books. Sasquatch Evidence of an Enigma, books one, two, and three. Same title, but different subtitles. And so the first book I started writing during COVID because, well, it was kind of hard to go anywhere and you didn't really know what was going to go on with this COVID thing. So I started writing a book and going through all my reports. And so the first book has got some of my favorite reports that I really like that were published to BFRO, good, solid reports. And I go into stick structures and I go into the fact that they have a language and that they can count and all the aspects. But it's the kind of book, if you are kind of interested, you haven't really had an experience or read any other material, it'd be a good one to start with. It's kind of like a primer, and then I go from that book to book two, and that just blows up like crazy with the quantum physics, supernatural, paranormal, whatever you want to call it, metaphysical events, especially going on with one gentleman up in Canada for on and off for 30 years. Just crazy stuff. And you got to have an open mind to read those books, or save your money, because I'd rather not buy a book and then be all angry, because but I tell people, this is why they're buying my books. Before, if it was paranormal or quantum science of any kind, that'd be the reason they didn't buy the book. But now it's the reason they're buying it, because people are seeing things they can't explain. And so the guy up in Canada, in some incredible stories, and he's been going through this for 30 some odd years. Some great artwork, great stories, and they're all these people are true. There's no fiction in any of my books. They're all real people with real experiences. I can't stress that enough. Yes, I have vetted the witnesses, and yes, I do speak to some people who are trying to pull stuff on me, and I know how to interview them and find out, if you're yanking my chain or not. It's real easy. It's not rocket science, but I'm not going to tell you how. Anyway, so the third book is the one with the cover with the hunter going checking his cameras, and then the Sasquatch is 4 seconds behind him. 4 seconds. And I have in this book, I have my awesome gifting and habituation that's going on out in the Western state, chock full of stuff. There's 40 pages on just this one family, because they've got all kinds of things going on with some great photos. And so, but that's the book. And now the people are requesting that I just do a book strictly on habituation, because I've got all these people, but all these people are in these books. So I hate to, but I have updates for virtually all their stories. And by the time I start another book, if I do, I'm going to have more updates to the ones that I will be including in the book that were already in the other books. That's just kind of how it works. I mean, today I got 11 photographs from my lady out in the West. I mean, just this morning, you know, and they've got the quantum metaphysical things going on. They have orbs in their house that float around, and then they become a Sasquatch from the waist up, floating at the foot of their bed. I've got probably 4 or 5. One of the accounts is really fascinating. The guy had 6 hours of missing time with a Sasquatch event. 6 hours. He was He's a very successful businessman, owns his own high-tech company up northeast. Can't tell you where. Wouldn't do it anyway, but it doesn't matter. And they had a small cabin in the woods that he retreated to every day after he left the big city. Well, they had a baby, and then his wife was pregnant again. So they decided to not move, but to add on to double the size of their cabin because they love the isolation. Because when you're working in the high tech world in the big city all day, you got so many things just attacking your head. The peace of mind he gets out there is great. So he works most of a day, then he goes out at night and he kind of oversees the construction crew that's doing the work. Well, the wife had to move out of the house because there's no electricity and plumbing while they're doing all this work. And so she's staying with parents about 10 miles down the road. And he sleeps in a 30-foot travel trailer on his property. And his companion is a very expensive, highly trained German Shepherd guard dog that has had military and police type training. It's trained to kill if necessary. It's a bad ass dog. It's just anyway. So, but he's there one night about 10 o'clock. The crew's putting everything away. They got big work lights out so they can kind of work into the night. And so they're putting all the tools away. And I think the last guy left and he's putting up a couple of things. And he sees something coming at him. And the dog is standing next to him, but he sits down and he stares at whatever it is coming. And he looks, and it's a Sasquatch. Now, they'd seen him on the property a few times. But I wouldn't call it a habituation, but they would watch him mow on his tractor. And a neighbor had a couple of bison on his property. So every now and then they'd hear these really loud calls. And he thought, well, I don't know if that was a bison or not. It didn't sound like it, but it was a Sasquatch. But they hear them all anyway. So he thought, well, maybe when the bison got out, it was walking to me. But it's 10 o'clock at night. And as this thing's walking, he sees, holy crap, that's not a bison. It's a Sasquatch. It's walking at him. And the dog got his command to go do something. It sat there. It did nothing. It just sat, and it's trained. I mean, he spent thousands training this dog and another thousands, buying the dog. They're very elite kind of dog. And it just sat there looking. And so he's going, we're out of here. And so they run back to the travel trailer. And he looks back and he still sees the thing. It's not coming after him. It's just walking routinely, leisurely, just walking right at him. But it's coming towards him. But it's not after him. It's not, menacing or snarling or anything. So he sees this and they barricade the door on the travel trailer. They get in there and he realizes, I don't have a weapon. Oh, crap. I don't have my gun. What am I going to do? So he goes through the kitchen and finds a carving knife. So like it's going to do. And he can see through the window slats that the Sasquatch is walking back and forth the front of the property, of the trailer. He's walking back and forth. And he just knows it's going to burst in any time. So him and the dog go barricade himself in the bathroom. If you know how big a travel trailer bathroom is, it's about 3x3 maybe, So him and this dog, and they're sitting on the floor, and he's got the knife, and he is pointing it at the door, arms straight out, and the dog is sitting next to him, not doing a thing. In fact, it's almost like in a trance. It's just, and it's got his eyes. It's just staring. It did nothing. It's like it was snapped off, which is another thing that they can probably do. Anyway, that was about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Next thing he knows, he wakes up 5:30 in the morning. He's still standing like this with the knife. The dog is leaning up against him now on his left side. And it's like, it's not asleep, but its eyes are open because dogs don't sleep sitting up anyway. They don't sleep like that. And he was snapped off. I think the Sasquatch knew what it was and just said, well, I'll just turn him off because I don't have to worry about that thing anymore. So he just snaps him off. So 5:30, he wakes up. And the only thing that wakes him up is the sound of the construction guys getting back over to work the house the next morning. And his wife shows up to cook breakfast. He cooks breakfast for the whole crew in the morning. He didn't tell her anything. He didn't tell her for 2 years. After the baby was born, he finally told her about that. although they had both seen them. 6 hours of missing time. Incredible. And his arms were relaxed as as if it was the moment that he finally got down on the floor and first put him up. He had, if you're sitting in a position for a long time, your muscles get all tense and tight. You get a Charlie horse. I mean, he was refreshed. It was like I just woke up from 5 minutes ago. No explanation. I told him, I suggested, regression hypnosis, because that works. I've had that done to me. And so he doesn't want to know. Basically, he said, I don't want to know that I had a Travis Walton like experience with a Sasquatch or an alien. I just don't want to know. Maybe later. And so he no longer stays in touch. But I understand he had that. He shared it, and the fake name and everything in there. But what an incredible story! The people I was telling you about, where I sat on the front porch and I'm hearing my voice, and that where the dog was buried, they've seen craft over their house 3 or 4 times. They usually are very long, cylindrical, cigar-shaped UFO, and it glides over their property. It's at least a couple 100 feet long. It glides right over the treetops. They sat on their porch and watched it a couple times. They have orbs come into their house and zip around. My witness out in the Western state, her husband has seen one, and she's seen a couple of them, orbs. It's not during a sighting, it becomes a sighting. That kind of thing where this orb manifests itself into a Sasquatch and then slowly dissipates when it's done paying a visit.